All right, family. We're going to be doing Genesis 16 today. So last week we saw that the Most High established that covenant with Abram to multiply his seed, to give him that land of Canaan forever to his seed, physical seed. That's us, black people. Not the people in the land right now over there pretending to be us, but to us, the so-called black people that scattered to the worldwide, four corners of the earth, who are living in sin, the majority of us, who have forgotten who they are, like the Most High has prophesied. But there's a minority of us, a remnant of us, that are waking up to the truth. So today we're going to focus on Genesis 16 today. Only 16 verses, but you know me, I can spread it out. But there's a lot of good meat in here, family, so we just going to get straight into it. We're going to be talking about Sarah and Hagar and their little situation and whatnot in this particular chapter, and then focusing on how those things that happen with them is similar to the same things that we are going through in our life today. So without further ado, brother, Genesis 16, 1 and 2, whenever you are ready.
Now Sarah, Abram's wife, bare him no children, and she had a handmaid, an Egyptian, whose name was Hagar. And Sarai said unto Abram, Behold, now the Lord hath restrained me from bearing. I pray thee, go in unto my maid. It may be that I may obtain children by her. And Abram hearkened to the voice of Sarai.
So we're going to focus on this first verse here, Sarai's dilemma. So we got Sarai here, right? Abram's wife. She isn't able to have kids. So let that sink in for a second, family. This ain't just about a personal crisis or a bout of infertility. No, this is about Israel. Sarai represents the promises made to our forefathers. Promises that seem to be in limbo at this time. So you ever feel like you're waiting on something that was promised to you, but it seems like it's taking forever? That's Sarai right here. Sarai's barrenness, family, isn't just a physical condition. It's symbolic of the waiting period before the Most High's promises come to fruition. Israel, too, has gone through periods of barrenness, times when it seemed like we were down and out, disconnected from our inheritance like we are today. But let's be real, family. Just because something's delayed doesn't mean it's denied. I want y'all to turn y'all books to Isaiah 54 and 1 so we can see what the Most High says through Isaiah here about this barrenness. Again, that is Isaiah chapter 54 and verse number 1.
Sing, O barren, thou that didst not bear, break forth into singing and cry aloud. Thou that did not travail with child, for more are the children of the desolate than the children of the married wife, saith the Lord.
So Isaiah is telling us that even in our barren state, the Most High has plans for us. Right now, even right now, family, we're in a barren state. The majority of our people are spiritually dead. They have no idea who they are, no idea what their destiny is, no idea what their purpose is. But don't think for a second, just because you don't see the promises manifesting right now, that they're not on the way. That's what the Most High wants you to understand in that particular section of the verse. So next we got Hagar here, the Egyptian. So first of all, don't miss the fact that Hagar is an Egyptian. Egypt in the Bible, as we know, is often symbolic of bondage, oppression, and those who are outside the covenant. So when Sarai turns to Hagar, what do you think that represents? That's Israel turning to outside solutions when the Most High's promise seems to be taking too long. So Hagar symbolically represents the nations we turn to when we lose faith in the Most High's timing. How many times, family, in our history, have we tried to solve our own problems by aligning with the wrong folks, by turning to heathen nations for support? We're doing that right now, rather than waiting on the Most High. And what has that ever gotten us? More problems, more bondage, and more strife. As we can see if we go to Isaiah 30 verses 1 and 2. Again, that's Isaiah 30, verses 1 and 2.
Woe to the rebellious children, saith the Lord, that take counsel, but not of me, and that cover with the covering, but not of my spirit, that they may add sin to sin, that want to go down into Egypt, and have not asked at my mouth, to strengthen themselves in the strength of Pharaoh, and to trust in the shadow of Egypt.
So Isaiah is calling out Israel for turning to Egypt, the very symbol of bondage, when they should have been trusting in the Most High. Sarai's choice to use Hagar is a precursor to the same error. So we got the today's context. What does that got to do with us today? How often do we, as Israelites, run and turn to Egypt in our lives? You know what I'm talking about. Instead of waiting on the Most High, we turn to the systems of this world, whether it's the government, the banks, or even these watered down religious institutions that have nothing to do with the truth of Scripture. So you're struggling financially, right? Instead of waiting on the Most High to provide, you run to the payday loan place down the street, modern day Egypt. You're lonely? Instead of trusting that the Most High will send the right person into your life, you swipe right on every app, trying to fulfill that void that with someone who's not even in the truth, modern day Hagar. We keep trying to birth our own solutions, family, through Hagar, when the Most High's promise hasn't even been fulfilled yet. And what happens? We end up with Ishmael, a situation that is more trouble than it's worth. So if we go over to Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, the Most High tells us exactly what to do before we go to these other nations. What do we need to do? Proverbs 3, 5, and 6.
Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths.
So this is what Sarai failed to do. She leaned to her own understanding and ended up creating more drama than she could handle. So the bigger picture here, the Most High's promise to Abram, who becomes Abraham, still stands. Sarai's misstep doesn't cancel it. It just complicates things. The promised child, Isaac, is still coming. And through Isaac, the seed of Israel will continue. But notice how going outside of the Most High's plan, Hagar, creates long-lasting consequences. Ishmael and his descendants become a thorn in the side of Israel. Just like all those Egyptian solutions we come up with today only end up causing more harm than good. And if we go over to Galatians 4, 22 and 23, Paul gives you an illustration of that. That's Galatians 4, 22 and 23. He'll break it down.
For it is written that Abraham had two sons, the one by a bondmaid, the other by a free woman. But he who was of the bondwoman was born after the flesh, but he of the free woman was by the promise.
Again, that was Galatians 4, 22 and 23. Paul breaks it down. Ishmael represents trying to fulfill the promise through fleshly means, through our own efforts, while Isaac represents the fulfillment of the Most High's promise through the Spirit. And trust me, fam, we want to be on the Isaac side of history, not on the Ishmael side. So for the second verse here, it says, and Sarai said unto Abram, behold, now the Lord hath restrained me from bearing. So here we are with Sarah, who's basically saying, look, Abram, the Most High has shut my womb. So clearly he's not going to come through for us. Let's take matters into our own hands. Now, Sarai, hold up now. You're about to mess things up by assuming that just because the promise hasn't been fulfilled yet, it means it won't be fulfilled ever. This is a classic case, family, of doubt creeping in. And we've all been there. Sarai thinks that because the Most High hasn't acted on her timeline, he's not going to act at all. If we go over to Lamentations chapter 3, 25 and 26, watch what this says here. Again, that is Lamentations chapter 3, verses 25 and 26.
The Lord is good unto them that wait for him, to the soul that seeketh him. It is good that a man should both hope and quietly wait for the salvation of the Lord.
So Lamentations tells us that it's good to wait on the Most High. But Sarai ain't having that. Like many of us, she's tired of waiting and decides to take things into her own hands. Spoiler alert, it's a bad idea. So the symbolism of Hagar. Now here's where things get real. Sarai's solution is to give Abram her maid, Hagar. Now let's pause for a second, family. As I said before, Hagar is an Egyptian, a representative of bondage, servitude, and everything that's outside of the promise of Israel. This move by Sarai is symbolic of Israel turning to the wrong sources for help, turning to the world, to foreign nations, to anything and anyone but the Most High. When Sarai says, it may be that I may obtain children by her, she's stepping outside of the covenant promises, family, and trying to manufacture a blessing through unlawful means. So let's be real. How often do we as Israel try to force blessings through shortcuts, compromises, and alignments with those who have no part in our covenant? What does the Most High say in Deuteronomy 7:3-4 about going to these other nations? What warning did he give us through Moses? Again, that's Deuteronomy chapter 7:3-4. What did he say?
Neither shalt thou make marriages with them. Thy daughter thou shalt not give unto his son, nor his daughter shalt thou take unto thy son. For they will turn away from thy son from following me, that they may serve other gods. So will the anger of the Lord be kindled against you and destroy thee suddenly.
So the Most High warned us against making alliances or covenants with nations outside of Israel. So Sarai's action here is a symbolic violation of this principle. She's trying to mix the promise with the world. And that's never going to work, family. So let's focus on Abram here. Instead of standing firm on the promises of the Most High, he hearkens to the voice of Sarai, just like Adam did to Eve. Now, some might think, oh, he's just being a good husband, right? Wrong. Abram wasn't just listening to his wife. He was ignoring the voice of the Most High. This is a warning for all of us. Don't let the voices around you drown out the voice of the Most High. When we start listening to the wrong voices, family, whether it's friends, family, society, or even our own doubts, we end up making decisions that lead us away from our true path. And what does that path lead? Let's go to Proverbs 14:12. Solomon will let you know where that path goes. Again, that is Proverbs chapter 14 and verse number 12.
There is a way which seemeth right unto a man, but the end thereof are all the ways of death.
So Abram thought he was doing the right thing by listening to Sarai, but it was the wrong move, family. Just because something seems right in the moment doesn't mean it's in line with the Most High's plan. So let's bring this to the present day, family. How often do we see this pattern repeating in our lives? In your career, you're promised something by the Most High, but it's taking too long, so you take a shortcut. Maybe it's compromising your values. Maybe it's aligning yourself with people you know aren't right. But hey, you're tired of waiting, right? That's Sarai all over again. And patience in your relationships. You know, the Most High has someone for you, right? But the wait is killing you. So you settle for someone who's not even in the truth, someone who's not aligned with your faith, because you think you can't wait any longer. That's Sarai, thinking she can force the promise through Hagar. And what about your finances, your money? You're waiting on the Most High to provide, but the bills are piling up. So you make moves that are outside of his will. Maybe it's not entirely ethical, but you need results now. Again, that's Sarai trying to force a blessing through her own means. So let's not forget what happened next, family. Sarai's decision to use Hagar ultimately leads to strife, jealousy, and division within this household. Ishmael is born, a child of the flesh, not of the promise. It becomes what? A source of conflict. So this is what happens, family. when we don't wait on the Most High. We create Ishmaels in our lives, situations that are more trouble than they're worth, all because we couldn't wait for the true promise. But what does the Most High tell us to do? If we go over to Isaiah 40 in chapter 40 in verse 31, what does he tell us to do, family? For the people that can wait, what's going to happen with them? Isaiah 40 and 31.
But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary, and they shall walk and not faint.
The Most High renews the strength, family, of those who wait on him. Had Sarah waited, she would have seen the promise fulfilled with all the unnecessary drama. So what's the conclusion of these verses, family? Trust the process. Don't create an Ishmael. Stop trying to rush the Most High. His timing is perfect, even when it doesn't align with our schedules. Don't turn to Hagar in your life. Don't look to the world, to shortcuts or to compromises to bring about what the Most High has promised. When you do, you end up with Ishmael, a problem, not a promise. That's what happens, family. We got to learn from Sarai's mistake. Rest in the Lord and wait patiently for him to fulfill his promises. Don't take no shortcuts. Don't align yourself with people who not align with the Most High. Wait on him, and I promise you, everything's going to come in its own time. So let's keep it moving, though. We go down to verses 3 and 4 of Genesis 16 to get some more lessons.
And Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar, her maid, the Egyptian, after Abram had dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan, and gave her to her husband Abram to be his wife. And he went in unto Hagar, and she conceived. And when she saw that she had conceived, her mistress was despised in her eyes.
So let's focus here on verse number 3 here. So Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar, her maid, the Egyptian. Here we go again, family. Sarai's impatience has now turned into action. She's not just talking about the problem anymore, family. She's actively trying to solve it herself by handing Hagar over to Abram. This is what happens when doubt festers into desperation. But let's not miss the symbolism here, family. Hagar the Egyptian. Once again, Egypt represents bondage, oppression, and everything that is outside of the covenant promise. Sarai, in her impatience, is now literally grabbing onto bondage and presenting it as a solution. She's taking what symbolizes slavery and foreignness and trying to make it part of the promise. How messed up is that? It's like trying to decorate a prison cell, family, and calling it luxury living. That's exactly what Sarai's trying to do here. If we go over to Proverbs 19 and 2, what does the Most High say about people with impatience? Again, that is Proverbs chapter 19 and verse number 2.
Also, that the soul be without knowledge, it is not good, and he that hath with his feet sinneth.
Solomon is saying willingness and stupidity don't go well together. If you are too eager, you will miss the road. Proverbs is straight up telling us that when you act out of haste, impatience, when you rush into decisions without true knowledge, you're bound to sin. Sarai's haste is about to create a mess that'll echo for generations. So the next part, after Abram had dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan, let's see what the significance is of that. So why did the Most High mention 10 years, family? Because it's highlighting the time, the waiting period. 10 years is a long time to wait, no doubt. But this mention of time is significant. Why? Because it's a reminder that even after all these years, the promise still hadn't been fulfilled. It's testing the faith of Abram and Sarai. And clearly, Sarai's patience has run out. But this isn't just a historical detail, family. It's a lesson for us today. How long have you been waiting on the Most High to fulfill the promise? And how many of us, just like Sarai, start to think it's been too long? Maybe I need to take matters into my own hands. I know I am guilty of that. The problem is, family, when we do that, we forget that the Most High's timing is perfect, even when it doesn't align with our microwave mentality. If we go to Habakkuk, chapter 2 and verse 3, what does the prophet say here about the Most High's timing? Again, that is the book of Habakkuk, chapter 2 and verse number 3.
For the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak and not lie. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come, it will not tarry.
So the Most High's promises are for an appointed time. The vision will come to pass, but you've got to wait for it. Sarai couldn't wait, and that's where she messed up. So then she gave her husband Abram to be his wife. She made it happen, family. This wasn't a passive mistake. It was an active choice to circumvent the Most High's plan. And what's Sarai doing here? She's giving Abram a new wife, but not one chosen by the Most High. Mind you, this is Sarah's handmaiden, hand-picked option B. So let's break this down. By giving Hagar to Abram, Sarai is essentially saying, I don't trust the Most High to deliver on his promise, so I'm going to manufacture a blessing my own way. And Abram, instead of being a spiritual leader he should have been, he goes along with it. This is a massive failure on both their parts, family. This whole scene is a symbolic disaster. Sarai's trying to merge the covenant promises with something that was never meant to be a part of it. It's like trying to mix oil and water, family. It just doesn't work. And guess what? The consequences of this decision ripple throughout history. And what does the Most High say with people who do not take his counsel? Let's go to Psalm 106. Psalm 106, verses 13 and 14. To see what happens to those people who don't wait on him.
They soon forgot his works. They waited not for his counsel, but lusted exceedingly in the wilderness and tempted God in the desert.
So this verse in Psalms is a call out to all of Israel who, like Sarai, forget the Most High's works and promises. And instead of waiting on his counsel, they try to force their own solutions. And what does that lead to, family? Tempting the Most High and bringing unnecessary hardship upon yourself. So let's bring this home with some real talk. How many times have we, as Israelites, decided to take matters into our own hands because we're tired of waiting? How many times have we created our own versions of Hagar because we think the Most High is taking too long? Let's think about it in the churches, in ministry. Instead of waiting for the Most High to elevate us, we start chasing platforms, popularity, and people who can help us get to where we want to go. But all we're doing is creating a Hagar situation, a temporary fix that leads to long-term problems. That's how you see with these churches right now. Look at all the issues they're going through now because they couldn't wait on the Most High. They was chasing fame and glory instead of waiting on the Most High to elevate them. What about family life? Maybe you're trying to have children, but it's not happening on your own timeline. So instead of waiting, you start looking at alternative methods that may not align with the Most High's plan. You're just trying to force a blessing that can't be forced. What about business? You're trying to get your business off the ground, but it's slow going. So you cut corners, make deals with people who don't share your principles, loan sharks, thinking that'll speed things up. But now you've got a Hagar in your operation, a problem, not a promise. So now you're struggling to fix that problem. May look good now, but on the back end, you still got to deal with that problem. Instead of waiting on the Most High to do it naturally, you try to do it on your own time. And you mess up in the process. So let's not forget what comes out of this decision. Ishmael. Now, Ishmael is a child born out of the flesh, as I said, not out of the promise. And while he's still Abram's son, he's not the one through whom the covenant is going to be fulfilled. So instead of bringing peace, Ishmael brings strife and division. This is what happens when we try to force the Most High's hand, family. We create situations that bring harm, more harm than good. If we go over to Galatians 4 and 29, Paul breaks this down even further. Again, that's Galatians 4 and 29.
But as then, he that was born after the flesh persecuted him that was born after the spirit. Even so it is now.
So Paul's calling it out. Ishmael, who was born of the flesh, becomes a persecutor of the one born of the spirit, Isaac. This is a direct result of not waiting on the Most High's timing and trying to do things our own way. So if we go on to verse number 4 here. So Abram, he went into Hagar now. So Abram, the so-called father of faith, just went and did what Sarai suggested instead of holding out for the Most High. He slept with Hagar, and guess what? She got pregnant. Now, on the surface, this might seem like a win, right? Sarai's plan worked, and now there's an heir in the picture. But that's wrong, family. This ain't no victory. This is the beginning of a mess that's going to haunt Israel for generations. What Abram did here was act out of the flesh, not out of faith. He literally just tried to manufacture the Most High's promise through human means. And when you try to force what the Most High has promised through your own effort, all you're doing is birthing problems, not blessings. If we go over to Romans 8:8, Paul keeps it simple. Again, that's Romans chapter 8 and verse number 8.
So then they that are in the flesh cannot please God.
Paul drops the truth bomb right there. Acting out of the flesh, trying to bring about the Most High's promises through your own methods, does not please him. Abram's actions here are a prime, I repeat, prime example of what happens when you put your faith in human solutions instead of divine timing. So now you got Hagar's conceit. So now we get into the real meat of this verse. Hagar, the servant, suddenly sees herself as superior to Sarai just because she's carried Abram's child. Talk about a power trip right there, family. She thinks she's Beyonce with a baby. Here's the thing, though. This isn't just about two women butting heads. This is about what happens when you try to mix the Most High's covenant with something that doesn't belong. Again, as I told you before, Hagar represents Egypt, bondage, the world, everything outside of the covenant. Sarai represents the covenant promise, the chosen people, Israel. That's us. The moment you try to bring the world into the covenant, guess what happens? The world starts thinking it's got the upper hand. Ain't that what happened to these heathen now? We want to be kumbaya with them, and now look at them. They despise us. They look on us. We the people of the book. This our land now. Get out of here, nigga. This is what they do. Now they looking down on you. White folks saying, the church, we are Israel now. You ain't Israel. He ain't dealing with y'all black folk no more. We Israel now. That's what happened with Hagar right here. That was a foreshadow. So Hagar's pregnancy makes her think she's now more significant than Sarai, even though Sarai is the one who carries the promise. So let's go over to Proverbs 30. We're going to read verses 21 through 23 here. Solomon's going to lay it straight out here what happens when the world is out of balance. Again, that's Proverbs chapter 30, verses 21 through 23.
For 3 things the earth is disquieted, and for 4 which it cannot bear. For a servant when he reigneth, and a fool when he is filled with meat. For an odious woman when she is married, and an handmaid that is an heir to her mistress.
You see that right there? Verse 23. A slave who takes the place of the woman who owns her. That's Sarai right there. The world is out of balance, family, when a servant starts acting like a ruler. Hagar, in this situation, is the servant who's now acting like she's the one in charge because she thinks her pregnancy gives her an edge over Sarai. But she's got it twisted. But this is what happens when you mix the holy with the unholy. Now let's talk about Sarai being despised in her eyes. This is where things really hit home. Sarai, who orchestrated this whole mess, is now facing the consequences of her own actions. She despised by the very person she tried to use to solve her own problem. How many times have we as Israelites tried to manipulate situations, family, to get what we want, only to have those same situations turn around and bite us in the butt? Sarai's decision to use Hagar wasn't just a lack of faith. It was a misplacement of trust. She trusted in her own plan, family, instead of the Most High's promise. And now she's reaping what she sowed. Hagar's contempt is a direct reflection of Sarai's failure to trust the Most High fully. If you go over to Galatians 6 and 7, Paul keeps it real simple right here. Again, that's Galatians chapter 6, verse 7. Most of y'all know this verse.
Be not deceived. God is not mocked. For whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap.
Paul doesn't mince the words here, family. Sarai sowed doubt and manipulation, and now she's reaping contempt and strife. This is a lesson for all of us, family. When you try to force the Most High's hand, don't be surprised when the situation you created turns against you. So let's bring this in today's context, 2024. How many times do we see this same scenario play out in our lives? Let's start with business. You cut corners to get a deal done quickly, right? Thinking you're being clever. But then that same shortcut comes back to bite you, whether it's through a bad partnership, a deal gone wrong, or a ruined reputation. Now you're despised, not respected. That's what you get for rushing. What about relationships? You force a relationship with someone who's not even in the truth, thinking that you can make it work because you're tired of waiting. But then that person starts to despise you, looking down on you because they don't share your values or your faith. I've seen that happen. Now you're stuck in a situation that's far from what you hoped it would be. What about in the church? You try to push your way into a position of leadership or influence before you're ready, aligning with people who don't share your vision. But once you're in, those same people start to undermine you, thinking they're better suited for the role. Now you're dealing with division and strife instead of unity and progress. This is exactly what happened to Sarai. She tried to force a situation, and now she's dealing with the fallout. The very person she thought would solve her problem is now the source of her misery. So what's the takeaway from these verses 3 and 4? Don't mix the promises with the profane, family. The Most High's plan is perfect. But when you try to bring in elements that don't belong, whether it's people, methods, or even mindsets, you end up creating a situation that's more trouble than it's worth. Hagar's pregnancy and her subsequent contempt for Sarai are a direct result of trying to force the Most High's hand. So we got to trust in the Lord, family, with all our heart. And don't try to lean on our own understanding. Because when we fully trust in the Most High, we won't end up despised by the very situations we tried to control. But let's keep it moving though, family. 5 and 6, it's going to get good. Trust me.
And Sarai said unto Abram, my wrong be upon thee. I have given my maid into thy bosom. And when she saw that she had conceived, I was despised in her eyes. The Lord judge between me and thee. But Abram said unto Sarai, behold, thy maid is in thy hand. Do to her as it pleaseth thee. And when Sarai dealt hardly with her, she fled from her face.
All right, here, let's focus here on verse number 5. So let's start with this first part. Sarai said unto Abram, my wrong be upon thee. So first, Sarai comes up with this harebrained scheme to sidestep the Most High's plan by giving Hagar to Abram. And now that it's backfired, she wants to blame Abram. This is classic deflection right here, family. Instead of owning up to her mistake, Sarai is trying to shift the blame onto her husband. But here's the truth. Sarai's wrong is on her. She's the one who doubted the Most High's promise, concocted this stupid plan, and now she's reaping what she sowed. What does James got to say about this? Well, if you go over to the book of James, chapter 1, and we read verses 14 and 15, this is what happens when you don't trust in the Most High, family, when you trust in your own flesh. James 1, 14 and 15, what does it say, brother?
But every man is tempted, but when he is drawn away of his own lust and enticed, then when lust hath conceived, it bringeth forth sin. and sin, when it is finished, bringeth forth death.
So James hits it right here on the head. Sarai was drawn away by her own impatience and desperation. Her lust for a quick fix led to her sin, specifically the sin of not trusting the Most High. Now that it's blowing up in her face, she's trying to dodge responsibility. But the truth is, family, this is all on her. So next up, she says, I have given my maid into thy bosom. Sarai's literally saying, hey, Abram, I handed you Hagar on a silver platter. Now look what happened. Well, what did you expect, Sarai? You tried to solve a spiritual problem with a worldly solution, and now you're surprised that it's a mess? So let's break it down. Bosom here represents intimacy, closeness, and trust. Sarai didn't just give Hagar to Abram, she gave her into a position of intimacy that was supposed to be reserved for herself as Abram's wife. This is symbolic, family, of how we as Israel sometimes compromise what's sacred by trying to bring in the world solution. So when you give what's holy, your trust, your closeness into the hands of something profane, Hagar, representing Egypt and bondage, you're setting yourself up for disaster. How so? Let's go to Proverbs 6. Solomon lays it out to you. Proverbs 6, 27 through 29. Again, that's Proverbs 6, 27 through 29. What's it say?
Can a man take fire in his bosom, and his clothes not be burned? Can one go upon hot coals, and his feet not be burned? So he that goeth into his neighbor's wife, whosoever toucheth her, shall not be innocent.
Solomon lays it out clear, family. When you play with fire, you're going to get burned. Sarai tried to bring something foreign into the covenant relationship, and now she's feeling the heat. This is a warning to all of us, family. Don't compromise what's sacred by mixing it with the profane. It never ends well. So now you see the inevitable fallout. And when she saw that she had conceived, I was despised in her eyes. Here's the thing, though. Sarai is shocked that Hagar now looks down on her. But really, what did she expect, family? Sarai gave Hagar the upper hand, and now she's surprised that Hagar is acting like she's the one in charge. This is what happens when you elevate something that was never meant to be elevated. Most I tell you, family, these heathen were never meant to be elevated, but our people elevate these people to godly levels. We worship these people. We worship the white man and the white woman in our communities. We do this, and we're surprised that those people despise us. Whoops. The Most High is telling you, these people were never meant to be elevated. Hagar, again, who represents bondage in the world, now thinks she's got one up on Sarai, the true wife, the one who carries the promise. This is symbolic of what happens when Israel, that's us, compromises and elevates worldly solutions or alliances. They start to despise us, family, and think they're better than us. Ain't we going through that today? Don't these other nations are starting to think that they're better than us? They pushing their weight around on us now, family. They showing us who the boss. But here's the kicker, family. We handed them that power. We gave it to them. Because we wanted to be accepted by these people, we gave them the power. What does Deuteronomy 28 say? We go to 43 and 44. The Bible talks about it. Deuteronomy 28, 43 and 44. What's it say?
The stranger that is within thee shall get up above thee very high, and thou shalt come down very low. He shall lend to thee, and thou shalt not lend to him. He shall be the head, and thou shalt be the tail.
This is direct consequence, family, of not following the Most High's commands. When Israel compromises, the stranger, symbolized by Hagar in this context, ends up getting the upper hand. Sarai is experiencing a microcosm of what happens when us, as Israel, doesn't fully trust in the Most High and instead tries to engineer their own solutions. So finally, we come to the Lord judge between me and thee. Now Sarai's calling on the Most High to judge between her and Abram. It's like she's saying, let the Most High decide who's really at fault here. But let's be real, the Most High already knows who's at fault. Both of them. Sarai for coming up with this foolish plan, and Abram for going along with it without seeking the Most High's counsel. So Sarai's calling of the Most High here is ironic. She's calling on the Most High now, but where was that trust in the Most High when she decided to give Hagar to Abram in the first place? This is a classic case of trying to pull the Most High into our mess after we've already ignored his plan. So let's bring this into today's context, fam. How many times do we see the same pattern in our own lives? What about relationships? Again, you compromise your standards, get into a relationship that you know isn't right. And when it all falls apart, you start blaming the other person. But the truth is, you knew it wasn't right from the jump. And now you're facing the consequences of your own decisions. What about people in the church? Because a lot of them are doing this. You jump into a ministry position or make a leadership decision without seeking the Most High's guidance. When things go sideways, you start pointing fingers at everyone else instead of acknowledging that you didn't wait on the Most High in the first place. And the kicker here, what about your finances, your money? You make a risky financial move, thinking it's the quick fix you need. But when it backfires, you start blaming the economy. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I know a lot of y'all saying that. The market, or even the Most High, instead of admitting that you didn't seek his wisdom in the first place. You put all your money on red, and now you're mad at the house because it didn't land on red. This is exactly what Sarai's doing, family. She's trying to dodge the consequences of her own actions by blaming Abram and even invoking the Most High. But at the end of the day, family, she set this whole mess in motion. So let's focus on verse number 6 here. Let's start with the first part. But Abram said unto Sarai, behold, thy maid is in thy hand. Do it to her as it pleaseth thee. Now, if this isn't one of the most passive responses I've ever seen, Abram just went along with Sarai's plan. And now that it's gone south, what does he do? He passes the buck right back to Sarai instead of stepping up and taking responsibility for the situation. A situation he contributed to. He basically says, well, she's your problem now. Do whatever you want. This is a clear case of spiritual passivity. Abram, the so-called father of faith again, should have been leading with righteousness and wisdom. Instead, he's washing his hands of the whole situation. Abram's response here is symbolic of what happens when we as Israelites fail to take spiritual leadership in our homes, in our communities and lives. When you don't step up and take responsibility, family, chaos ensues. That's why we on the bottom, family. Nobody want to take responsibility. So we on the bottom. If we go over to Ezekiel 34:4, what does the Most High say through Ezekiel here? Ezekiel 44.
What verses on 44?
And 4. 34 and 4.
34 and 4.
Yes, sir.
My bad. Give me a sec.
Yes, all good.
And 4.
4.
The disease have ye not strengthened, neither have ye healed that which was sick, neither have ye bound up that which was broken, neither have ye brought again that which was driven away, neither have ye sought that which was lost, but with force and with cruelty have ye ruled them.
So right here, Ezekiel is calling out the leaders of Israel for their failure to shepherd the people properly. Same way we got going today. Look at these churches. They ain't teaching the people the truth. So Abram's failure to lead in this situation is just a microcosm, small, of how things can go wrong when spiritual leadership is lacking. Instead of addressing the situation as he should have, with wisdom and compassion, Abram just throws his hands up and leaves Sarai to deal with it however she sees fit. So next up, let's dive into thy maid is in thy hand. So notice the language here. Hagar is still referred to as thy maid, emphasizing her status as a servant, not as an equal. Abram's statement, in thy hand, suggests complete control or power. So Sarai has the power to do whatever she pleases with Hagar. And this is where things really take a dark turn. So this phrase is symbolic of what happens when we misuse the authority or power the Most High has given us. Sarai has the power to deal with Hagar, but instead of using it righteously, family, she's about to use it vindictively. This is a lesson for us. Just because you have power or authority over someone doesn't give you the right to abuse it. Let's see what Solomon got to say about that. If we go over to Proverbs 29:2, Solomon got something to say to address this exact situation right here. Again, Proverbs 29:2.
When the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice. But when the wicked beareth rule, the people mourn.
When injustice rules, family, everyone groans. But when it's wielded righteously, it brings peace and joy. Sarai's about to misuse her authority, family, and it's going to bring nothing but pain, not just to Hagar, but to herself as well. So let's get to the heart of the verse. And when Sarai dealt hardly with her, let's be real, this isn't just a little disagreement or a stern talking to. The phrase dealt hardly suggests harsh treatment, possibly even abuse. Sarai, who was the one who came up with the whole plan, is now taking out her frustration and bitterness on Hagar. She's angry, family, not just at Hagar, but at herself. And she's misdirecting that anger by lashing out at someone who's ultimately just a pawn in her scheme. This is what happens when we let bitterness and resentment fester inside of us. Instead of dealing with the root issue, her lack of faith, and her impatience, Sarai is taking it out on Hagar. This is a warning, family, to us. When you don't address the real problems in your life, that bitterness will spill out and hurt others, often the ones who are least deserving of it. And Paul talks about this. If we go over to Ephesians 4:31. Again, that's Ephesians 4:31. What does Paul say here?
Let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and evil speaking be put away from you with all malice.
So Paul calls us to put away bitterness and wrath because he knows the damage it can do, not just to others, but to ourselves. Sarai's harsh treatment of Hagar is a direct result of her own unresolved bitterness and frustration. Instead of seeking healing, she's spreading her pain around, family. So what happens? What's the conclusion? Hagar fled from her face. So she runs away. She's had enough. Think about that. Hagar, an Egyptian slave with no rights and no real power, is so desperate that she flees into the wilderness. This is symbolic of what happens when oppression becomes unbearable. Hagar's flight represents the natural human response to oppression. When you are being mistreated, you seek escape, even if it means running into the unknown. But this also speaks to a broader truth here. When Israel is oppressed or mistreated, that's us, even to this day, our instinct is to flee, to escape the situation. But here's the thing, family. Running away doesn't solve the problem. It might give you a temporary relief, but it doesn't address the root cause. Hagar's flight is a temporary fix for a deeper issue that's still unresolved. So let's break it down to 2024. Leadership, whether it's in the home, the community, or workplace, when those in charge, like Abram, abdicate their responsibility, give it away. It opens the door for chaos. You can't just pass off your problems to someone else and expect things to get better. Y'all seen it when your bosses, they don't want to take care of the problem, so they pass it on to somebody else. And that person pass it on to somebody else. What they say? Shit rolls downhill. And then it comes up on your desk, and now it's a monstrous problem. Chaos, family. Relationships. When you have the upper hand, like Sarai did with Hagar, how do you use that power? Misusing your authority or position to vent your frustrations or insecurities will only lead to more pain and brokenness in your relationships. And what about your daily life? When you're dealing with bitterness, like Sarai, do you face it? or do you take it out on others? Do you run from your problems like Hagar, or do you seek the Most High's guidance to deal with them head on? These are the modern scenarios, family, that mirror the dynamics here in this verse. They're all about avoiding responsibility, misusing power, and fleeing from problems instead of addressing them. So we have to learn from this, family. The Most High's plan is always better than anything we could come up with on our own. We got to trust him, follow his lead, and walk in the path of his righteousness if you want everything to be okay in your life. So let's keep it moving, though. It gets better. 7 and 8. Whenever you're ready, brother. Genesis 16.
And the angel of the Lord found her by a fountain of water in the wilderness, by the fountain in the way to Shur. And he said, Hagar, Sarai's maid, whence camest thou, and whither wilt thou go? And she said, I flee from the face of my mistress Sarai.
So let's start here, verse 7, with the angel of the Lord found her. Now let's be clear about what's about to happen here. Hagar has fled from Sarai's harsh treatment, and she's out in the wilderness, probably feeling abandoned, alone, and desperate. But here comes the angel of the Lord stepping into the situation. This isn't just any old messenger, family. This is a divine appearance, and it's a sign that the Most High is personally involved in what's going down. The angel of the Lord in the Hebrew is Malach Yahweh, which literally means a messenger sent directly from the Most High. This is significant because it shows that the Most High hasn't forgot about Hagar, even though she's not a part of the covenant line. This is a reminder to us that the Most High is always in control, even in the midst of chaos, and he's involved in the lives of all his creation, not just the direct descendants of Israel. And if we go over to Psalm 34 and 7, what does the psalmist say here? Psalm 34 and 7.
The angel of the Lord encampeth round about them that fear him, and delivereth them.
So here's a clear reminder that the angel of the Lord is a protector and a deliverer. Even though Hagar isn't even a part of the covenant, the Most High is still watching over her because she's connected to Abram, the man of the covenant. This shows the extent of the Most High's mercy and intervention, even in situations that seem hopeless. So this angel of the Lord found her by a fountain of water in the wilderness. Let's focus on that part. So let's talk about this wilderness. Biblically here, the wilderness is a place of testing, isolation, and often encounter with the Most High. Hagar is in a barren, desolate place, both physically and spiritually. But right here, in the midst of her wilderness, she finds a fountain of water. And water in the scriptures, family, is often a symbol of life, renewal in the word of the Most High. The fact that Hagar is found by a fountain of water in the wilderness is symbolic of the Most High's provision and mercy, even when you're in a place of desolation. So it's a symbol here that life and hope can spring up even in the most barren of circumstances, family. And if we go over to Isaiah 41, 17 and 18, the Most High through Isaiah says it right here. Again, that's Isaiah chapter 41, 17 and 18.
When the poor and needy seek water, and there is none, and their tongue faileth for thirst, I, the Lord, will hear them. I, the God of Israel, will not forsake them. I will open rivers in high places and fountains in the midst of the valleys. I will make the wilderness a pool of water, and the dry land springs of water.
So Isaiah's words resonate here. The Most High provides water in the wilderness, a literal and spiritual lifeline. Hagar is experiencing this firsthand. She's not just physically thirsty, she's spiritually and emotionally parched. And the Most High meets her need at that exact moment. So now let's get into by the fountain in the way to Shur. So what's up with Shur, you ask? Shur is a region on the northeastern border of Egypt, essentially the gateway back to Hagar's homeland. So here's the deal. Hagar is on her way back to Egypt. back to what she knows, back to her old life. This is where the Most High intercepts her. The phrase "in the way to Shur" is loaded with symbolism. Hagar is trying to escape her problems by going back to her past, just like many of us do when things get tough. We retreat to what's familiar, even if it's not the best for us. But the Most High meets her on the road, effectively saying, hold up, before you go back, let's have a conversation. If we go over to Jeremiah 2:18, Jeremiah expounds upon that. Again, that's Jeremiah chapter 2 and verse number 18. Watch this.
And now what hast thou to do in the way of Egypt? To drink the waters of Shihor? Or what hast thou to do in the way of Assyria? To drink the waters of the river?
So Jeremiah is calling out Israel for constantly looking back to Egypt, to old ways, old comforts, instead of trusting in the Most High. Hagar's on the same path, literally headed back to Egypt. But just like Israel, she's about to be redirected by the Most High, who has bigger plans than just letting her run back to her old life. So let's break this down to the modern day 2024 crisis situation. So just like Hagar, many of us find ourselves in wilderness situations, times of isolation, desperation, or spiritual barrenness. And just when we think we're abandoned, the Most High steps in. Maybe it's through a word, a person, or an unexpected provision, a fountain of water in our wilderness. What about running back to the past? How many times, family, have we, like Hagar, tried to run back to our old ways, our old lives, when things get tough? Maybe it's going back to old habits, old relationships, or old mindsets. But the Most High intercepts us, often in the most unexpected ways, and redirects us right back to where we ran from. Divine interventions, whether you're facing a personal crisis, a spiritual low, or just feeling lost. The Most High's intervention, family, can come when you least expect it. Maybe you're in the way to Shur right now, on your way back to something familiar, but not necessarily good for you. The Most High might just meet you there, offering you living water instead of letting you return to spiritual Egypt. These examples, family, show how the Most High works in our lives today, just as he did with Hagar. He steps in right when we're about to make a wrong turn or give up, offering us a way out, a way forward, and a reminder that he hasn't forgotten us. So let's not miss the bigger picture here, though. The Most High's interaction with Hagar shows his unfailing mercy. Even though Hagar was fleeing from her problems, the Most High didn't just let her go. He sought her out, met her where she was, and provided for her needs, both physically and spiritually. This is a powerful reminder that the Most High's mercy extends even to those who aren't even part of the covenant line, but who are connected to his people, family. That's why the Most High tells the other nations to cleave to Israel if you want some of these blessings. You see that? You see an example right here. She's clinging. She's cleaved to Abram. And now guess what? She gets to partake in these blessings, the crumbs off the table, family. This is what the other nations have to do if they want some of our blessings. They got to cleave to us. But the many of them are arrogant. They don't want to do it. They think they're better than us, but they're going to have to find out the hard way. So what's the conclusion here? To verse 7. Trust in the Most High's presence in your wilderness, family. Hagar's story shows us that even when we're in the wilderness, when we feel lost, abandoned, or ready to run back to what's familiar, the Most High is there. He meets us at our lowest points, offers us living water, and redirects us before we make a mistake that could lead us back to bondage. And if we go over to Psalm 139, and we read 7 through 10, these verses resonate with what I just said about the Most High's everywhere. Again, that's Psalm chapter 139, verses 7 through 10. Watch this, family. Can't escape them.
Whither shall I go from thy spirit? Or whither shall I flee from thy presence? If I ascend up into heaven, thou art there. If I make my bed in hell, behold, thou art there. If I take the wings of the morning and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, even there shall thy hand lead me, and thy right hand shall hold me.
So there's nowhere you can go where the Most High isn't with you, family. Whether you're in a spiritual wilderness or on the road back to your old life, the Most High is there. He's waiting to meet you, to offer you living water, and to guide you back onto the path of life. Trust in his presence, Israel, even in the wilderness, like we are today. And now, and know that his mercy and guidance are always available to you, no matter where you are. And now to focus on verse number 8. So let's start with this. And he said, Hagar, Sarai's maid. Watch this. Let's not miss this significance, family. The angel of the Lord doesn't just call her Hagar. He specifically calls her Sarai's maid. This isn't just about identifying her. It's a reminder of her status and role. You see the Most High? You see what he do to these heathen? He remind them, hey, you a heathen. You a servant. You are a maid of my people. Don't start thinking you better. Remember your place. So Hagar might be trying to run away from her problems, but the Most High's messenger is making sure she remembers exactly who she is and where she came from, which is crucial, family, because it underscores the reality that no matter how far we try to run, we can't escape the truth of our circumstances. Hagar's status as Sarai's maid is a reflection of her position, not just socially, but spiritually. She's not the woman of the promise. She's a servant within the household of the man of the covenant. This reminder is humbling and probably stings a bit, but it's necessary. The Most High is bringing Hagar back to reality, as he often does with us when we are trying to escape from uncomfortable truths. So we go over to Ephesians 6, 5-7. The Most High, well, Paul talks about this. Very dynamic. Again, that's Ephesians 6, 5-7.
Servants, be obedient to them that are your masters according to the flesh, and with fear and trembling, in singleness of your heart as unto Christ.
So Paul's word, go ahead.
No, okay. Not with eye service as men pleasers, but as the servants of Christ, doing the will of God from the heart, but with goodwill, doing service as to the Lord and not to men.
So Paul's words reflect the biblical principle of knowing your role and serving faithfully within it. Hagar's position as Sarai's maid is a hard truth she needs to face, and the Most High's messenger isn't sugarcoating it. This is a reminder for us as Israelites to acknowledge our roles and responsibilities even when they're uncomfortable. So now let's dig into the key questions here. Whence comest thou, and whither wilt thou go? These aren't just casual questions, family. They are a divine reality check. The angel of the Lord is forcing Hagar to confront her situation head on. Where'd you come from, Hagar? What's your story? And more importantly, where do you think you're going? These questions are symbolic of the Most High's ways of making us face the music. When we as Israelites try to run from our problems, be it spiritual, emotional, or physical, the Most High doesn't just let us flee blindly. He confronts us with these same questions. Where are you coming from? What are you running from? And where do you think you're going to end up? It's a wake-up call. A reminder that no matter how far you run, you can't outrun the truth. And we go over to Psalm chapter 139. And we read verses 1-3. The psalmist is going to remind us the Most High knows exactly where we've been and where we're going. Again, at Psalm 139, 1-3.
To the chief musician, the Psalm of David. O Lord, thou hast searched me and known me. Thou knowest my down sitting and mine uprising. Thou understandest my thoughts afar off. Thou compassest my path and my lying down, and art acquainted with all my ways.
David is saying, you know when I'm resting, when I'm working, and from heaven you discover my thoughts. You notice everything I do and everywhere I go. Hagar might be trying to flee, but the Most High knows her path, just like he knows ours. These questions are designed to make her and us realize that there's no escaping the Most High's plan or his knowledge of our situation. So let's focus on Hagar's response. I flee from the face of my mistress, Sarai. Notice that Hagar doesn't try to downplay or sugarcoat her situation. She's straightforward with it. She's running away because she's scared, because Sarai has been harsh with her. But here's the thing, family. Fleeing isn't solving anything. Hagar's running away from her problems, but those problems are still there, unresolved, waiting to be dealt with. Hagar's admission is symbolic of how often we respond to difficult situations, family. Instead of facing them head on, we run. We flee from the face of our problems, just like Hagar fled from the face of Sarai. But here's the truth. Running doesn't eliminate the problem. It just postpones the inevitable. You cannot run what needs to be confronted, whether it's a personal issue, a spiritual struggle, or even a relational conflict. So let's break it down in the modern day. Avoiding responsibility. How often, family, do we as Israelites avoid facing our responsibilities or the consequences of our actions? Maybe it's in our relationships or jobs or even our spiritual walk. Like Hagar, we run from the face of our problems, thinking that distance will solve them. But the Most High sees it all, family. And like the angel with Hagar, confronts us with the truth. What about running away from the truth? We in this walk, right? In today's world, people flee from the truth all the time. Whether it's the truth about who they are, what they've done, or where they're headed. But the Most High's word is like the angel, standing in our path, asking us to account for where we've been and where we think we go in. Can't run away, family. What about confronting fear? Fear drives many to flee. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of the unknown. But just like Hagar, running doesn't bring peace. It just prolongs the turmoil. The Most High's way is to confront these fears head on, not to run from them. These examples show exactly how often we react like Hagar, fleeing instead of facing the reality of our situations. But just as the angel of the Lord confronted Hagar, the Most High confronts us to bring us back to the path we're supposed to be on. But let's not lose sight of the bigger picture here. The Most High, through his messenger, is calling Hagar to account, not just for where she's been, but for where she's going. This isn't about punishing her. It's about guiding her back to where she needs to be. That's the big one right there. Where she needs to be. The same goes for us as Israelites. The Most High isn't in the business of letting us run off into the wilderness unchecked. He's going to confront us, ask us those hard questions, and bring us back to the truth. So what's the takeaway? Stop running and face the truth. Hagar's encounter with the angel of the Lord is a call to what? Accountability. She's forced to confront where she's been and where she's going. And so are we. The Most High isn't going to let us run away from our problems or our responsibilities. He's going to meet us in our wilderness, ask us those hard questions, and bring us back to the path of righteousness. If we go over to Psalm 139 again, we read verses 23 and 24. Again, that's Psalm 139, 23 and 24.
Search me, O God, and I know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts. And see if there be any wicked way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting.
Ask the Most High to search your heart. Don't run from the truth. Don't flee from your responsibilities, and don't avoid the reality of your situation. Face it, deal with it, and trust that the Most High is guiding you even in the wilderness. He's not going to let you wander off into the darkness, family. He's going to bring you back to the light, back to the truth, and back to the path of life. That's the truth, family. Can't run away I know I have run away from a lot of issues. But guess what? Those problems still stayed there until I came back and resolved. Maybe you got problems going on in your life that you are running away from, that you don't even know about. Confront them head on. The Most High will guide you and make sure that you come out on top. So let's get some more wisdom here. Let's go now to verses 9 and 10.
And the angel of the Lord said unto her, return to thy mistress and submit thyself under her hands. And the angel of the Lord said unto her, I will multiply thy seed exceedingly, that it shall not be numbered for multitude.
Let's focus here on verse 9. So let's start with this first part. And the angel of the Lord said unto her, return to thy mistress. Now, if this isn't the last thing Hagar wanted to hear, I don't know what is. She's out here in the wilderness, probably thinking she's about to get a fresh start. Maybe a one-way ticket to freedom. But nope. The angel of the Lord, sent directly by the Most High, tells her to turn her behind around and go right back to where she came from. Talk about a reality check, family. But let's break it down what it really means. Return here isn't just a casual suggestion. It's a command. The Most High is telling Hagar to take her behind back and face the very situation she's running from. This is symbolic how the Most High often deals with us, his chosen people. You think you can just run away from your responsibilities? Think again. The Most High will send you right back to deal with what you're trying to escape from. There's no running from the lessons he's trying to teach you. Hagar thought running away was the right way. As I told you before earlier, there's ways which seem right to a man, but in the end, they lead to death. The Most High's way, which often seems tough or even unfair in the moment, is the way of life. Running might feel like freedom, but it's actually a trap leading to destruction. The Most High sends her back because there's unfinished business to handle, and that's where her growth lies. So now let's get into the real kicker and submit thyself under her hands. Oh, you thought running away was your big escape plan? The Most High says, nah, go back and submit. That word submit is loaded. In Hebrew, the word here is anah, which means to humble oneself, to be afflicted, or to bow down. This isn't just about going back, family. It's about embracing humility and enduring hardship. Let's be real here. Submission is a dirty word in today's world. Everyone wants to be the boss, the head honcho, the one calling the shots. But the Most High is telling Hagar, and by extension, all of us, that sometimes the path to true spiritual growth and blessing is through submission, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts. Let's go over to our brother James, because James talks about this. Go to James chapter 4, and we read verse number 10. Again, that's James chapter 4 and verse 10. What does James say?
Humble yourselves in the sight of the Lord, and he shall lift you up.
He shall lift you up. James lays it out plain. The way up is down. I know that sounds backwards. But if you want the Most High to elevate you, you've got to learn to humble yourself first. Hagar's test wasn't in running away. It was in going back and submitting to Sarai, the very person who caused her pain. The Most High was shaping her character, just like he shapes ours through the trials we think we're too good to endure. All right, so let's zoom out and look at the bigger picture. Why would the Most High send Hagar back into a situation that was clearly uncomfortable, even oppressive? Because the Most High's plan trumps our temporary comfort. He is not interested in giving us a life of ease. He's interested in refining us, making us into the people he's called us to be. Hagar's return to Sarai wasn't just about her. It was about fulfilling the Most High's plan for her son Ishmael, who would go on to become a great nation. The Most High's plans are always bigger than our immediate circumstances, family. And sometimes that means enduring hardship now for a greater blessing later. If we go to Romans 8 and 18, watch what Paul says. Again, that's Romans 8:18. Watch what Paul say.
For I reckon that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed in us.
So Paul's got it right. The pain of today is nothing compared to the glory that's coming. The Most High was setting Hagar up for something greater, but she had to go back and endure first. The same goes for us. Sometimes the path to our promised blessing runs straight through the valley of submission and hardship. Isn't that what we're going through today, family? We got to submit to these nations who hate us, who despise us, but we got to keep our head down. Why? Because the glory is coming. The Most High's finna come. He's finna bring us together, one nation again, going back to the land and inheriting the whole earth. We finna rule the whole planet, family. Every nation is going to be under our rule. But we got to endure this first. We got to endure this. We got to put our head down and just say, yes, sir. No, sir. We got to do it even if it hurts. And I know it hurts, family. It hurts me every day. I got to look a heathen in the face and say, yes, sir, it hurts. But I do it anyway because I know what's coming. So let's give you some modern examples. I talked about it in the workplace. Maybe you stuck in a job you hate, dealing with a boss who's got Sarai level attitude. You think the answer is to quit and find something else. Oh boy, I know I went through this a whole lot of times in my life. But what if the Most High is telling you to stay, to submit, and to learn something crucial in that uncomfortable place? Something to think about. What about relationships? Maybe you're running from a difficult relationship because you don't want to deal with the person's flaws or your own. Oh my goodness. The Most High might be calling you to return and submit. Not in a way that tolerates abuse, but in a way that forces you to confront your own issues and grow in humility and grace. What about in your spiritual life, in this truth? Perhaps you've been avoiding some spiritual discipline, like prayer, fasting, or studying the word. That's a big one. Because it's too difficult or inconvenient. I ain't got no time to study the word. I'm too busy. The Most High might be saying, return and submit. That discipline, family, that submission is where your spiritual strength will be forged. These examples show how the Most High often calls us to return and submit in areas we'd rather avoid. But just like with Hagar, there's a blessing on the other side of that submission. But let's not miss the symbolism here, though. Return and submit are two sides of the same coin in the Most High's economy. Returning symbolizes repentance, coming back to where you're supposed to be, even if it's uncomfortable. Submitting symbolizes humility, placing yourself under the authority or circumstances the Most High has ordained for your growth. Isn't that where we are as a people? The Most High has put us under these people's yoke. But that's where the growth comes in, family. That's where your spiritual growth comes in. That's where you become stronger. If we go over to 1 Peter 5 and 6, Peter talks about this. More about this humility. Again, that's 1 Peter 5 and 6.
Humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, that he may exalt you in due time.
So Peter's words echo the message to Hagar. Humble yourself now, submit to the process now, and in due time, the Most High will lift you up. There's no shortcut, family. No easy way out. You've got to go through it to get to it. So to take away from this verse, this single verse, embrace the return and submit to the process. The Most High isn't interested in giving you an easy out. He's interested in refining you, shaping you, preparing you for something greater. Hagar's story is our story. When we try to run from our problems, the Most High calls us back and tells us to submit. It's through submission that our true character is formed, family, and our future is secured. If we go to Hebrews 12 and 11, to finish off this one verse, Hebrews 12 and 11, what does it say?
Now, no chastening for the present seemeth to be joyous, but grievous. Nevertheless, afterward it yieldeth the peaceable fruit of righteousness unto them which are exercised thereby.
So Israel, we got to learn from Hagar's experience here. Don't run from the Most High's discipline. Don't flee from uncomfortable situation he has placed you in. Return, submit, and trust that the Most High is working all things together for your own good, even when it doesn't feel good in the moment. The peaceable fruit of righteousness is waiting on the other side of your submission. So we got to stop this running, turn around and submit to the Most High's plan, because that's where your true blessings lie. So focusing now on verse number 10. Let's start with the big promise. I will multiply thy seed exceedingly. Now, Israel, let's not miss over this promise, how big this promise is. The Most High isn't talking about a little blessing here, like, oh, you'll have a couple of kids. No, he's saying exceedingly, which in the Hebrew is harbah arbe, meaning abundantly, greatly, to a vast degree. This is the Most High's way of saying, you think I'm just going to give you a little? Nope, I'm about to blow your mind. This promise, family, is coming right after the Most High tells Hagar to return and submit to Sarai, a situation that's anything but comfortable. But here's the kicker. The Most High's blessings come through obedience, even when that obedience feels like swallowing a bitter pill. Hagar's about to receive a blessing that's going to affect generations. And it's all tied to her returning and submitting. The Most High doesn't do anything halfway, family. When he blesses, he goes all in. And this promise to Hagar is proof of that. If we go to Malachi 3 and 10, you'll see this. Again, that's the book of Malachi, chapter 3, verse 10.
Bring ye all the tithes into the storehouse, that there may be meat in mine house, and prove me now herewith, saith the Lord of hosts, if I will not open you the windows of heaven and pour you out a blessing, that there shall not be room enough to receive it.
So Malachi lays it down. When the Most High blesses, he pours it out so abundantly that you can't even contain it. That's exactly what he's promising Hagar here. An overflowing, unstoppable blessing that's going to reshape her entire future. So next, let's talk about that it shall not be numbered for multitude. Now, if you thought the Most High was just going to give Hagar a big family thing again, he's talking about a legacy so vast that no one will be able to keep track of it. Imagine trying to count the stars in the sky or the grains of sand on the beach. Yeah, that's what the Most High is saying about Hagar's descendants. This is a promise of an enduring, uncountable legacy. This phrase, not be numbered for multitude, is a direct callback to the promises made to Abram, the father of many nations. The Most High is showing that his blessings are not limited by circumstances. Hagar, a servant woman in a difficult situation, is being promised a future that's beyond anyone's wildest dreams. It's a reminder that the Most High's plans are always bigger than our immediate circumstances. We go over to that promise he made to Abram. Genesis 13 and 16. It's the same promise he made to Hagar, he made to Abram. Genesis 13 and 16.
And I will make thy seed as the dust of the earth, so that if a man can number the dust of the earth, then shall thy seed also be numbered.
So this is a parallel, as I said, to the promise made to Abraham, or Abram at this point. The Most High is consistent. He promised Abram a legacy beyond counting, and now he's extending a similar promise to Hagar. This is a testament to the Most High's faithfulness in his ability to turn even the most unlikely situations into a source of incredible blessing. So let's break down the symbolism here. Multiply signifies not just growth, but exponential growth. Something that keeps increasing and expanding beyond what's expected. The Most High isn't in the business of doing things on a small scale, family. When he multiplies, he does it in a way that's impossible to ignore. And not numbered symbolizes a legacy that's so vast, it transcends human comprehension. This isn't just about having a big family. It's about creating a dynasty, a lineage that will leave an indelible mark on history. So if we go over to Deuteronomy 1, 10 and 11, Most High did the same promise here to our people. Deuteronomy 1, 10 and 11.
The Lord your God hath multiplied you, and behold, ye are this day as the stars of heaven for multitude. The Lord God of your fathers make you 1,000 times so many more as ye are, and bless you as he hath promised you.
So Deuteronomy echoes this idea of multiplication and uncountable legacy. The Most High's blessings are so abundant that they're likened to the stars of heaven, countless, overwhelming, and beyond human understanding. This is the kind of legacy the Most High is promising to Hagar, despite her current lowly position. So let's zoom out for a second and look at the bigger picture. Why is the Most High making this incredible promise to Hagar, a servant woman who's being mistreated and is now on the run? Because the Most High's blessings, family, aren't limited by human status, circumstances, or expectation. He's sovereign. He blesses who he wants, when he wants, and how he wants. And when he blesses, it's always in a way that's beyond our comprehension. So Hagar's story, family, is a powerful reminder that the Most High's plans are always bigger than our immediate circumstances. She's in a tough spot, no doubt about it. But the Most High is showing her that in her current situation doesn't define her future. He's given her a promise that's going to change everything, not just for her, but for generations to come. So let's break it into 2024. What about your career? Again, you might be stuck in a dead-end job, feeling like you're going nowhere. But the Most High could be setting you up for a promotion or opportunity that's going to multiply your influence and impact far beyond what you thought was possible. Think about that, family. You may be stuck in a job, it ain't paying shit. Ain't paying you nothing. Ain't paying you nothing. But you don't know what you got on the horizon. What about your family? Maybe you're dealing with family strife or feeling like your lineage isn't going to amount to much. The Most High can take that situation and turn it into a legacy that lasts for generations, impacting countless lives. Don't put the Most High in the box. He can do what he wants. And what about your spiritual life? You might feel like you're spiritually dry, like you're not growing or making any impact. I used to feel that way. But the Most High can multiply your spiritual fruit in ways you never imagined, turning what seems like a barren season into a harvest that's too vast to count. Same with this ministry, family. We started out small, and it's been growing. It's growing. My influence is getting bigger. It's reaching out into more spaces. Because I used to be that way. I used to think, I'm not growing. Where's this going to go? Where's it going, Father? And just like that, he has made his ministry grow and flourish and prosper. So these are examples to show how Most High can take any situation, family, no matter how bleak or insignificant it seems, and turn it into something that multiplies and creates a lasting legacy. So what's the takeaway from this verse? Expect the unexpected, family, from the Most High. Hagar was in a tough spot, but the Most High gave her a promise that was beyond anything she could have imagined. He promised to multiply her seed exceedingly, creating a legacy that couldn't even be numbered. That's the kind of God we serve, Israel. One who turns our struggles into blessings, our pain into promise, into purpose, and our small beginnings into overwhelming legacies. And we finish this verse off with Ephesians 3 and 20. What does it say? Again, that's Ephesians chapter 3 and verse number 20. And it says, now unto him that is able to do exceedingly abundantly, above all that we ask or think, according to the power that worketh in us. So Paul wraps it up perfectly The Most High can do exceedingly, abundantly, above all we can ask or think. So Hagar's story here is a testament to that truth. So Israel, my family out there, scattered to the four corners of the earth, stop limiting the Most High with our small thinking. He's in the business of multiplying, of creating legacies that can't be counted, and of blessing us in ways that go beyond our wildest dreams. Expect the unexpected and trust that the Most High's plans for you are bigger, are better, and beyond anything you can imagine. Never forget that, family. We keep it moving in Genesis 16, 11 and 12. 11 and 12.
And the angel of the Lord said unto her, Behold, thou art with child, and shalt bear a son, and shalt call his name Ishmael, because the Lord hath heard thy affliction. And he will be a wild man. His hand will be against every man, and every man's hand against him. And he shall dwell in the presence of all his brethren.
But let's kick this off with the angel's first words. Behold, thou art with child. Really? As if Hagar didn't already know she was pregnant. But here's the thing. This isn't just a casual statement from the angel. This is the angel making a divine announcement. And when the Most High speaks, it's not about stating the obvious. It's about revealing something deeper. The use of behold, which is hane in Hebrew, is like saying, pay attention. Something important is happening here. So this phrase symbolizes that the Most High is fully aware of Hagar's situation, her condition, her struggles, and her fears. It's a reminder that nothing escapes his notice. Even when you're out in the wilderness feeling like nobody sees you, the Most High is fully aware of your situation, Israel. He sees it all, and he's about to turn what seems like a burden, a child out of a complicated situation, into a blessing with a purpose. As David reminded us already with Psalm 139, 1 and 2 earlier, the Most High knows everything about us, our thoughts, our circumstances, everything. Just like he knew Hagar was pregnant and exactly where she was, he knows your situation too. There's no hiding from the Most High's all-seeing eye. So next up, the angel drops this, and thou shalt bear a son. Now, in ancient times, bearing a son was a big deal. It wasn't just about having a child. It was about securing a legacy, an heir, someone to carry on the family name and inheritance. So when the angel tells Hagar she's going to have a son, it's the Most High's way of saying, I'm giving you something significant, something that's going to matter in the long run. This isn't just a random baby announcement, family. It's a declaration of purpose. The Most High is letting Hagar know that her son isn't just a product of her circumstances, being Sarai's servant, being mistreated. He's destined for something greater. This son is going to play a crucial role in the unfolding story of nations. We go over to Genesis 17 and 19, the next verse over, or the next chapter over. Watch what this says. Genesis 17 and 19.
And God said, Sarah, thy wife shall bear thee a son indeed, and thou shalt call his name Isaac. And I will establish my covenant with him for an everlasting covenant, and with his seed after him.
So just like Isaac was a son of promise for Abraham and Sarah, Ishmael is being positioned as a significant figure in the grand scheme of things. The Most High doesn't do anything without purpose, family. And the fact that Hagar's son is specifically mentioned as a son points to the importance of his role in the future. So now here's where it gets really interesting, and call his name Ishmael. Names in the Bible, as I've shown you guys all over in these lessons, aren't just labels, they're prophetic. They carry meaning, purpose, and destiny. The name Ishmael means God hears, or God will hear, from the Hebrew Yishmael with a Y. The Most High is making a statement here. He has heard Hagar's cries, her suffering, her affliction, and he's responding with a promise embodied in her son's name. This is a powerful, powerful reminder that the Most High isn't deaf to our struggles. When you're in the wilderness of life, as we are today, feeling abandoned and oppressed, he hears you. and not just hears you in a passive way. He's actively responding. And in Hagar's case, that response is a son whose very name will be a constant reminder that the Most High hears and answers. We go over to Psalm 34 and 17. See what David says. Again, that's Psalm 34 and 17.
The righteous cry, and the Lord heareth, and delivereth them out of all their troubles.
So David tells us straight up, when the righteous cry out, the Most High hears and delivers. Ishmael's name is a testament to this truth. The Most High heard Hagar's affliction and responded with a promise embedded in her son's identity. Every time Hagar or anyone else called Ishmael's name, they'd be reminded that the Most High hears. And finally, let's break down the last part. Because the Lord had heard thy affliction. Now, this is where the Most High shows his compassion and his justice. Hagar isn't some random side character in the story of Abraham. She's a woman who's been mistreated, cast out, and left to fend for herself. But the Most High doesn't ignore her suffering. He sees it, hears it, and responds to it. Let's not gloss over the word affliction here. In Hebrew, it's oni, which doesn't just mean suffering. It implies poverty, misery, and oppression. Hagar was in a bad way, family, but the Most High wasn't going to leave her in that state. He responds to that affliction, not by immediately removing it, but by giving it a purpose. Ishmael's birth is a direct response to her suffering, turning her pain into a promise. So let's see who else cried out and the Most High heard. Let's go to Exodus 3 and 7. Again, that's Exodus chapter 3 and verse 7. What does that say, brother?
And the Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people, which are in Egypt, and have heard their cry by reason of their taskmasters, for I know their sorrows.
So just like he heard the affliction of Israel in Egypt, the Most High heard Hagar's suffering. He's not a distant deity like these atheists like to say, who's unaware of our struggles. He's intimately involved, hearing and responding to our pain in a way that brings about his purpose. So let's bring it in our modern context today. What about your personal life? Maybe you're going through a tough season, whether it's financial struggles, health issues, or relationship problems. The Most High hears your affliction, just like he heard Hagar's cries in the wilderness. He hears your prayers, your tears, and your frustrations, and he's responding, even if it's not in the way you expect. What about the social injustice that's happened to his people? We live in a world full of oppression and injustice. But the Most High hears the cries of the oppressed. That's us, Israel. Just like he heard Hagar, he hears the cries of those suffering under systemic injustice. And he's working behind the scenes to bring about his justice, even if it's not on our timeline. So these heathen, they got it. They got trouble coming to them. They got judgment. It may not happen on our time and family. It may not happen immediately, but it's going to happen. Just got to be patient. And what about your spiritual struggles, though? Maybe you're battling spiritual dryness or feeling distant from the Most High. He hears your struggle, though. He's not ignoring you. He's working in ways you might not see yet. Ishmael's name is a reminder that the Most High hears and responds, even when we're in our lowest moments. And so these examples show that the Most High is always listening, always aware, and always ready to turn our afflictions into something meaningful in his grand plan. So what's the takeaway from this verse? What we learn, the Most High hears, responds, and redeems. Hagar was in the wilderness, feeling abandoned and oppressed. But the Most High heard her affliction and responded with a promise. Her son's name, Ishmael, will forever be a reminder that the Most High is not deaf to the cries of his people. He hears you, he's responding to you, and he turns your pain, our pain, into promise. And we finish off this verse with Isaiah 61 and 3. Again, Isaiah 61:3. What does the prophet say here?
To appoint unto them that mourn in Zion, to give unto them beauty for ashes, the oil of joy for mourning, the garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness, that they might be called trees of righteousness, the planting of the Lord, that he might be glorified.
So Isaiah captures the essence of the Most High's response to affliction. He turns ashes into beauty, mourning into joy, and heaviness into praise. Ishmael's birth was the beginning of Hagar's beauty for ashes story, a testimony that the Most High hears and redeems. So we focus on the 12th verse. So let's start with this phrase, and he will be a wild man. Now, this isn't just a literal statement about Ishmael running around like a caveman. The Hebrew word here for wild is peri, P-E-R-E, which actually refers to a wild donkey, a creature known for its stubbornness, independence, and resistance to domestication. You can't tame a wild donkey, and that's exactly the point being made about Ishmael. What the Most High is saying here, fam, is that Ishmael's descendants will have a fiercely independent spirit. They won't be easily controlled or subdued by others. They're going to be strong-willed with a natural inclination towards freedom and autonomy, even if that means being at odds with the rest of the world. This wildness isn't necessarily a negative trait. It's a sign of resilience and determination. They're going to live on their own terms, not bowing to the systems or structures imposed on them by others. So if we go over to Job 39:5-8 to see more of their character here. Job 39:5-8.
Who hath sent out the wild ass free, or who hath loosened the bands of the wild ass? Whose house I have made the wilderness, and the barren land his dwellings. He scorned the multitude of the city, neither regardeth he the crying of the driver. The range of the mountains is his pasture, and he searcheth after every green thing.
So Job here, he gives us a poetic depiction here of the wild donkey, showing it's a creature that's free, untamable, and indifferent to human control. This is the perfect metaphor for Ishmael and his descendants, living on their own terms, outside of the constraints that others might try to place on them. So let's tackle this phrase. His hand will be against every man, and every man's hand against him. This right here is the Most High laying out the reality of conflict that's going to surround Ishmael and his descendants. This isn't just about physical fighting. It's a constant struggle for autonomy, for survival, for space in a world that often is hostile. So Ishmael's descendants are going to be fighters, not because they're inherently violent, but because they're constantly resisting control. They're not going to back down from a challenge, and they won't be pushed around. This phrase also speaks to the tension and conflict that comes from being misunderstood and marginalized, a reality that many of us as Israelites can all relate to. So we go over to Genesis 25:18 here, which is going to confirm something about Ishmael's descendants. Again, that's Genesis 25:18.
And they that dwelt from Havilah unto Sur, that is before Egypt, as thou goest toward Assyria, and he died in the presence of all his brethren.
So this verse later on in Genesis confirms that Ishmael's descendants lived in close proximity to others that were often in conflict with them. They didn't isolate themselves. They lived among others, but maintained their independence, even if it meant strife. And finally, we get to, and he shall dwell in the presence of all his brethren, which is crucial. The Most High is saying that Ishmael's descendants will live among their brothers, meaning among other nations, including the descendants of Isaac. They won't be off in some distant land, isolated from the world. No, they're going to be right there in the thick of it, interacting, trading, and yes, sometimes clashing with the other nations. But here's the kicker. Despite all the conflicts and challenges, they're going to survive and thrive right there in the presence of their brethren. They're not going to be wiped out or assimilated. They'll maintain their distinct identity even while living among others, which is a testament to their resilience and the Most High's promise that they would endure. And we can see more of this promise, of this blessing, if we go to Genesis 17 and 20. Most High just laying out Ishmael's line here. Again, Genesis 17 and 20.
And as for Ishmael, I have heard thee. Behold, I have blessed him and will make him fruitful and will multiply him exceedingly. 12 princes shall he beget, and I will make him a great nation.
So the Most High promised to bless Ishmael and make him a great nation. Despite the conflicts and struggles, Ishmael's descendants would not only survive, but thrive and become a significant people in that region. This is what it means to dwell in the presence of all his brethren, to hold your ground and prosper, even in a world that might be against you. So we don't know about Ishmael's descendants, because we know they're not those people over there now. We know that. Everybody says this is the Afghan people. A lot of people say these are the people in the land now. No. Remember, Abraham was a black man. Ishmael is a Shemite. He's Shemitic, just like us. They're not those people that's over there, those mixed people over there. I can guarantee you that. But I can tell you this. Look over there in that so-called Middle East, though. They're over there. A region that's often characterized by resistance, conflict, and a constant struggle for autonomy. The descendants of Ishmael are still their family. They ain't gonna show you, though. They'll show you those light-skinned ones, but they ain't gonna show you the dark ones. They still living in the presence of their brethren, and they're still fiercely independent. So your personal life here, maybe you're someone who's always had to fight for your place in the world, constantly resisting control, maintaining your independence and dealing with conflict because of it. That's the spirit of Ishmael at work. It's not easy, but it's a sign of strength and resilience. So what about our Israelite struggle, though? So as Israelites, we often find ourselves in a similar position, resisting the systems that try to control us. Well, at least some of us are. Maintaining our identity in a world that wants to assimilate us. Remnant of us are. The majority have fully assimilated into this system. But guess what? We can learn from Ishmael's story that sometimes the key to survival is embracing that wild, untamed spirit and refusing to be subdued. Remember, the Most High tells us to be separate from these other nations, independent from them, resisting control. That's why the Most High is bringing up Ishmael's story. So these examples I showed you show that the legacy of Ishmael is still very much alive today, both in the literal descendants and in the broader sense of anyone who fights to maintain their independence and identity in a world that's often hostile to it. Aren't they hostile to you? When you say you're an Israelite, how angry these people get to you, calling you a liar, telling you to stop smoking crack, calling you a conspiracy theorist, calling us copycats. That's what it means to take on that spirit of Ishmael. But let's keep it going, though. 13 and 14, Genesis 16, we almost done, family.
And she called the name of the Lord that spoke unto her. Now God seeth me. For she said, have I also looked after him that seeth me? Wherefore the well was called Beer Lahairoi. Behold, it is between Kadesh and Bered.
So let's kick things off with this first part here in verse 13. And she called the name of the Lord that spake unto her. Now let's get one thing straight. This isn't a casual name drop here. Hagar is having an encounter with the Most High, and she's recognizing him in a way that's deeply personal. This is significant. Why? Because up until this point, Hagar might have thought she was just another invisible servant in the background of a much bigger story. But the Most High steps in and shows her that he sees her, knows her, and is directly involved in her life. The phrase called the name of the Lord in Hebrew is Kara Shem Yahweh, which means to invoke or proclaim the divine name. This isn't just about identifying who spoke to her. It's about acknowledging his authority and presence in her situation. So Hagar, right here at this point, is recognizing that the same God who made covenants with Abram, later Abraham, is now making himself known to her personally. That's a plot twist, family. The Most High isn't just a God of the patriarchs. He's stepping into the life of an Egyptian servant and revealing his power and presence. But let's see more, another encounter. If we go over to Exodus 3 and 14, another encounter here. Again, that's Exodus 3 and 14.
And God said unto Moses, I am that I am. And he said, Thus shalt thou say unto the children of Israel, I am hath sent me unto you.
Just like Moses had a personal encounter with the Most High at that burning bush, Hagar is having her own moment of divine revelation. She's realizing that the Most High is not some distant deity, but an active presence in her life. So next, let's dive into the phrase, thou God seest me. Now, this is where things get real right here. In Hebrew, Hagar calls the Most High El Roi, which means the God who sees. This isn't just about physical sight, family. It's about divine perception, understanding, and care. Hagar is saying, hey, the Most High actually sees me, my struggles, my pain, my situation. I'm not invisible or insignificant to him. That could be said about you too. You too, family. That could be said just about you. He know all about you. You ain't insignificant. You ain't invisible. You may be invisible to the world, but to the Most High, he sees you. This is a powerful revelation right here. Because let's be honest, how many times have we felt we're just going through the motion, unseen and unappreciated, especially as a people? But the Most High is saying, I see you. Not just in a general sense, but in a deeply personal and specific way. Hagar, a marginalized servant, is being told by the creator of heaven and earth that she matters, that her life, her struggles, and her future are seen and known by him. So let's get into the next part here. Have I also here looked after him that seeth me? So let's break this down because it's a bit of a head scratcher at first glance. Threw me for a loop when I first saw it. What Hagar is really saying here is, wait a minute. Did I just see the one who sees me? This is her moment of shock and awe. She's realizing she had a direct encounter with the Most High, the God who has been watching over her all along. This isn't about physical sight. This is spiritual perception, family. Hagar is coming to grips with the reality that the Most High has been aware of her situation the whole time. And now he's revealed himself to her. It's a moment of clarity. Light went off in her head, where she realizes that her life and struggles aren't happening in a vacuum. She's been seen and cared for by the Most High all along. But let's go else and see who else had a revelation just like this, or realization. If we go over to Genesis 28 and 16 and read that verse. Again, that's Genesis 28 and 16.
And Jacob awaked out of his sleep, and he said, Surely the Lord is in this place, and I knew it not.
So Jacob had a similar moment of realization when he encountered the Most High in a dream. He woke up and said, Surely the Lord is in this place, and I knew it not. Hagar's experience is much the same. She suddenly realizes that the Most High has been involved in her life in ways she hadn't recognized before. So this seeing here, this symbolizes divine perception, as I said, how the Most High sees us in our entirety, understanding our struggles, understanding our pain, and understanding our circumstances. It's about his active involvement in our lives, even when we feel invisible or insignificant. And being seen, which symbolizes human awareness, our realization that the Most High has always been present and active in our lives. It's about recognizing that we are never truly alone, even in our darkest moments. And if we go over to Proverbs 15:3, Solomon makes it very, very clear. Again, Proverbs 15:3.
The eyes of the Lord are in every place, beholding the evil and the good.
So Solomon reminds us that the Most High sees everything. Hagar's experience is a personal revelation of his truth. She realizes that the Most High has been watching over her all along, even when she felt abandoned and alone. Let's bring it to today, 2024, in your personal life. Maybe you've been feeling like you're going through life unnoticed, like your struggles are invisible to the world. But just like Hagar, you need to realize that the Most High sees you. Your pain, your tears, your efforts, they're all being seen by him. You are not alone, like Michael Jackson said. And your situation is not overlooked. What about your times of despair? When you're at your lowest, feeling abandoned and hopeless? Remember that the Most High is watching over you, just as he revealed himself to Hagar in her moment of despair. He's present in your life, even when you can't even see it. Sometimes it takes a moment of reflection to recognize his hand at work, family. Now, what about your spiritual awakening? Maybe you've had a moment where you suddenly realize that the Most High has been involved in your life in ways you had noticed before, like when you woke up in this truth and you look back on your life and you're like, dang, the Most High had me in all these different situations. I should have been dead. Or worse. I don't think there's anything worse than being dead, but you get what I'm saying. But the Most High has been involved in your life. That's your thou God seest me moment, a realization that changes your perspective and renews your faith. These examples I just showed you show that the Most High's presence is constant, even when we don't recognize it. Just like Hagar, we need to open our eyes and see that he's been with us all along. So family, the Most High sees you. He sees you, and you need to see him. Hagar's encounter with the Most High is a powerful reminder that we are never truly alone. The Most High sees us in our struggles, our pain, and even in our triumphs. He's a God who sees, and he wants us to recognize his presence in our lives. So we go to 14 here. Let's start the first part. Wherefore the well was called Beer Lahai. Yes, that word. Man. Now, this isn't just a random place name. No, sir. This is a name bursting with significance. Beer Lahai Roi. I think I got it right that time. In Hebrew, it means well of the living one who sees me. That's what it means in Hebrew, family. Let that sink in for a minute. This isn't just about naming a well, family. It's about memorializing a divine encounter. Hagar, an Egyptian servant, just had a life-altering experience with the Most High, and she names the place to reflect that. In ancient times, family, naming places wasn't just about geography. It was about marking significant events, especially divine encounters. By naming the well Beer Lahai Roi, Hagar is saying, this is the place where I met the living God who sees me. This name is a testimony, family, to the Most High's personal involvement in her life. And it's a reminder for all who have come to that place afterward that the Most High sees, that the Most High hears, and that the Most High acts on our behalf of his people, even those who feel overlooked and insignificant. If we go over to Genesis 28:19, we're going to see Jacob naming another place here. Jacob naming another place. Genesis 28:19. Whenever you're ready, brother.
And he called the name of that place Bethel, but the name of that city was called Luz at the first.
So just like Jacob named Luz to Bethel, meaning house of God, after his encounter with the Most High, Hagar named the well Beer Lahai Roi. These names aren't just labels, family. They're declarations of divine encounters that change the course of history. Next up, the verse says, behold, it is between Kadesh and Bered. Now, why does the Bible bother to give us these geographical coordinates? Because location matters, fam. Kadesh and Bered aren't just random spots on the map. They're significant in the biblical narrative. Kadesh is often associated with holiness and sanctification. The Hebrew word Kadash means to be holy or set apart. It's a place where the Israelites would later encamp and where important events in their wilderness journey would take place. Bered isn't as well known, but its name means hell or coolness, indicating a harsh or challenging environment. So what's the Most High telling us by placing this well between Kadesh and Bered, family? He's showing us that divine encounters often happen in the in-between places, between holiness and hardship, between being set apart and facing challenges. Hagar's encounter with the Most High happens in the place that symbolizes the tension between being chosen and going through trials. It's in this in-between place that Hagar receives her revelation. It's a reminder that the Most High meets us in those tough spots, not just in the comfort zones. If we go over to Exodus 17:7, watch this. Exodus 17:7. We're going to see what the Israelites did here.
And he called the name of the place Massah and Meribah because of the chiding of the children of Israel and because they tempted the Lord, saying, is the Lord among us or not?
So just like the Israelites named Massah and Meribah to mark their struggle and doubt, this well's location between Kadesh and Bered symbolizes the struggle between faith and hardship, and how the Most High shows up right there in the middle. So let's break down the symbolism. The well, a well in the desert, isn't just a source of water, family. It's a source of life. In the Bible, wells often symbolize divine provision and revelation. The well, Beer Lahiroi, is more than just a watering hole. It's a place where Hagar's spiritual thirst is quenched by the revelation of the Most High's presence in her life. The phrase, the living one, referring to the Most High, emphasizes that the God Hagar encountered is alive, that he is active, and that he is involved. He isn't a distant deity like these other people say he is, or a dead idol like the atheists say. This is the living God who sees, hears, and intervenes in the lives of his people. And then you got the in-between place, the well's location between Kadesh and Bered, which shows the reality that divine encounters, again, often happen in the tension between being set apart for the Most High and facing the difficulties of life. Because it's in these challenging places, family, like we are in this wilderness right now, that the Most High's presence becomes most evident. So what's some of the modern examples that we can relate to today in your personal wilderness? Maybe you're in a tough spot right now, between jobs, between relationships, between faith and doubt. That's your in-between space, your Kadesh and Bered. It's in these tough spots that the Most High wants to reveal himself to you as the living one sees you. Don't be surprised, family, if your greatest revelation comes when you're feeling your lowest. In the midst of hardships, when you're facing trials, whether it's financial struggles, health issues, spiritual battles, remember the Most High often meets us in those hard places. Just like Hagar found the well in the desert, you might find your most profound encounters with the Most High in the middle of your struggles. These examples show that the Most High often meets us in the places we least expect, in the midst of our struggles, in the in-between spaces of life, offering us revelation and provision when we need it most. If we go over to John 4:14 to finish off this verse, John 4:14.
But whosoever drinketh of the water that I shall give him shall never thirst. But the water that I shall give him shall be in a well of water springing up into an everlasting life.
So the Mashiach's words in John 4 point to the reality that the Most High provides the living water, spiritual sustenance that quenches our deepest thirst. Hagar's experience at the well is a foreshadowing of this truth, showing us that the Most High sees us, meets us, and provides for us in the most unexpected places. So Israelites, next time you find yourself in a dry place between Kadesh and Bered, remember that the Most High is right there with you, ready to reveal himself as the living one who sees you. Drink deeply from the well of his presence and let that water refresh your soul. So let's finish up this chapter here, verses 15 and 16, and then we done.
And Hagar bore Abram a son, and Abram called his son's name, which Hagar bore, Ishmael. And Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bore Ishmael to Abram.
So let's start with the obvious here in 15. Hagar bare Abram a son. Now, this isn't a statement of fact. It's a moment loaded with significance. Hagar, as I told you before, an Egyptian servant, has just given out birth to Abram's son. But let's not get it twisted. This isn't about Hagar suddenly becoming the matriarch of Israel. This is about the Most High working out his plan, even through situations that might seem messy or complicated. The fact that Hagar, a servant, bears Abram a son is a reminder that the Most High's plans often unfold in ways that defy our expectations. This isn't the child of the promise. That's going to be Isaac. But Ishmael is still a part of the Most High's plan. The birth of Ishmael is a pivotal moment because it sets the stage for future interactions between his descendants and Israel. But let's not forget, this is also a moment that highlights the complexities of human decisions and divine sovereignty. Abram and Sarai's impatience led to this situation, but the Most High is still in control, weaving it all into his grand design. If we go over to Isaiah 55, 8 through 9, most of y'all know about these verses. But for the ones who don't, let's read it. Isaiah 55, 8 through 9. What does the Most High say here?
For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, saith the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts.
So Isaiah reminds us here that the Most High's ways are higher than ours, even when situations seem off track from a human perspective. The Most High is still working out his perfect plan. The birth of Ishmael is a prime example of this. What seems like a detour is actually a part of the divine narrative. So we already talked about Ishmael. In his name, God hears, God will hear. Powerful. Because it directly connects to the Most High's promise to Hagar in Genesis 16:11, where the angel told her that the Most High had heard her affliction. The name in the kid Ishmael is a way of memorializing that divine encounter. It's like saying the kid is living proof that the Most High hears us, even in our lowest moments. So every time they called his name, they were reminded that the Most High is a God who hears. This isn't about Hagar's experience. It's a declaration of faith for all of Israel. The Most High hears the cries of his people. He hears you, family, even when they're in situations that seem beyond their control. So let's bring it to our modern day. Your personal life. Maybe you're in a situation where you feel unheard by your family, your community, or even by the Most High. But just like Hagar in the wilderness, you need to remember that the Most High hears you. All the prayers you do, your cries, your struggles, they're not falling on deaf ears, family. The birth of Ishmael is a reminder that the Most High is always listening, even when it feels like no one else is. Ishmael's descendants are part of this bigger picture. Like many other peoples in the world have had their own struggles and challenges. But the name Ishmael is a reminder that the Most High's plans are bigger than any one person or nation. He hears the cries of all who seek, and he's working out his purpose in ways that we might not fully understand. So what about us being Israelites, though? As the true descendants of Israel, we've been through centuries, we can even say millennia, of struggle, oppression, and displacement. But the name Ishmael reminds us that the Most High hears us, our cries for justice, our cries for restoration, our cries for the fulfillment of his promises. He's heard them all. Just as he heard Hagar's affliction, he hears the cries of his people. And he's moving to bring about his divine plan. These show that the Most High's attentiveness, family, is not just historical fact, but a present reality. Just as he heard Hagar, he hears us today. And he's working in our lives in ways that we might not fully see yet. So Israel, remember this. He's hearing your cries. And he's not just a passive listener. He's actively working on your behalf. Ishmael's name is testimony to this. And it's a reminder that no matter where you are or what you're going through, the Most High is hearing, seeing, and moving to fulfill his promises to you. So the Most High is telling you to keep the faith, stay strong, and know that he who heard Hagar is the same God who hears you today. And we wrap up this chapter by diving into the 16th verse. Abraham is 86 years old. The significance of Abram's age here. So let's start with the number, because you know the Bible doesn't throw out numbers just for fun. Abram was 86 years, or in plain English, 86 years old, when Ishmael was born. Now, 86 might seem like just a random age to some, but let's dig into the significance. 86 is a number that represents the culmination of a long period of waiting. This is his first child, family. 86 years old. He just having his first kid at 86. Long period of waiting, testing, and spiritual growth. Abram had been walking with the Most High for a long time. And this child's birth marks a key moment in his journey. But don't get it twisted. This isn't the child of promise. Ishmael is born as a result of Abram and Sarah's impatience. A human attempt to help the Most High's plan along. At 86, Abram is old enough to have learned patience, but clearly not old enough to avoid the temptation of trying to speed things up. But this age also marks a turning point. Why? Because Abram's journey was far from over. And the birth of Ishmael, while significant, is a stepping stone towards what? The greater promise to come. Isaac, the true heir, where we come from. So Abram's age here isn't about marking time. It's about highlighting the process of faith and lessons that come from waiting on the Most High's timing rather than rushing things, family. If we go over to Hebrews 6 and 12, shows you about this patience that we need to have. Hebrews 6 and 12. What does it say, brother?
That ye be not slothful, but followers of them who through faith and patience inherit the promises.
So Hebrews reminds us that it's through faith and patience that we inherit the promises. Abram's 86 years are a testimony to the fact that even the father of faith had to learn the hard way that trying to rush the Most High's plan only complicates things. Now let's talk about this phrase, when Hagar bare Ishmael to Abram. Notice that the verse emphasizes that it was Hagar who bore Ishmael, not Sarai. This isn't just a biological fact. It's a reminder of the consequences of the decisions made out of impatience and human reasoning. Hagar's role as the mother of Ishmael, with Abram as a father, it sets up a dynamic that will have ripple effects throughout the biblical narrative as we continue to go on in this book. Ishmael is born out of a situation where Abram and Sarai took matters into their own hands, rather than waiting for the Most High to fulfill his promise. This is a recurring theme throughout Scripture, the tension between divine timing and human impatience. But let's not miss the spiritual lesson here, though, family. Ishmael's birth is a reminder that the Most High can work through even our own missteps to bring about his own purposes. Abram's decision to have a child with Hagar wasn't the plan, but the Most High still used it. However, remember, this isn't a justification for taking shortcuts. It's a warning that while the Most High can redeem our mistakes, it's always better to wait on his perfect timing than making those mistakes in the first place. So let's bring it to your modern day life. Maybe you're in a season where you feel like the Most High is taking his sweet time, fulfilling his promises to you. You've been praying, you've been waiting, you've been hoping, but nothing seems to be happening. The temptation to help the Most High out by taking matters into your own hands can be overwhelming. But Abram's experience at 86 should remind you that patience is key. Don't rush the Most High's timing, family. He knows what he's doing, even when it seems like he's taking too long. So what about your relationship life? Maybe you're thinking about settling down, but the right person hasn't come along yet. The pressure to settle for someone who isn't really right can be intense, especially as time goes on. But take a lesson from Abram. Don't rush into something just because you're tired of waiting. The Most High has a plan, and it's worth waiting for the right time and the right person. But what about your spiritual journey, though? Maybe you're struggling with waiting on the Most High's guidance or direction in your life. You're tempted to make a decision just to get things moving. But remember, Abram's 86 years represent a long journey of faith. And even though he stumbled, the Most High still worked things out. So trust that the Most High is working in your life right now, even when you can't even see it, and resist the urge to take shortcuts. So what's the takeaway from this last and final verse? The Most High's timing is perfect, family. And our impatience that is, can complicate his plan, but it doesn't derail it. Abram's 86 years are a testimony to the importance of patience and faith. Even though Ishmael's birth came from a place of human impatience, the Most High still used it as part of his greater plan. But let's be clear, as I told you before, this isn't an excuse to take matters into your own hands. It's a reminder that waiting on him is always the best course of action. So Israel, finishing up, let's learn from Abram's experience and commit ourselves to waiting on the Most High with patience and with faith, because his timing is perfect and his promises never fail. And with that, I end my lesson. All praises and great glory to the Most High Yah for allowing me to dispense this wisdom in your ears today. I hope you guys were spiritually edified. Yah willing, next week, we gonna jump to the next chapter, Genesis 17. And with that, I say, Shalom.